Okay, so some of the learning objectives today, we're going to discuss some recent cyber attacks and current cyber threats, trending cyber solutions and some hot topics, understand approaches to understand your cybersecurity posture, some of the frameworks that you can put in place or your organizations can put in place to help, and then strategies to advance your cybersecurity program. Some quick hits, some quick wins. All right, so just an industry overview on the agenda, recent cyber events, cyber threats and motivations, cybersecurity frameworks and controls, and cyber hot topics. Anybody have any questions yet? All right. Everybody know what cybersecurity is? Okay, nods, good, all right. All right. So when I started this out, I heard financial and I started just with financial services, but I understood that FEI was much more than just financial services that was going to be here. So the landscape of this entire cybersecurity practice is everything you can think of. If it's connected to the internet and it talks and transmits data, it is part of the industry that needs to be protected. Cyber crimes happen in every industry, and as globalization happens every day, more and more with companies, it becomes more prevalent that you utilize it, and don't just make it a dollar line item in your IT budget. Some of the big opportunities that we've seen over 2017, automated teller machines, credit cards, mobile applications, the Internet of Things, and that happens to be one of the big ones that they are predicting is going to have the most cybersecurity events happening this year in 2018. Point of sales, mergers and acquisitions, and new products and strategies. So insider threats, fraud, cyber espionage. As you can see, according to 2016 CSO, most organizations have a distinct disadvantage because they're trying to keep up with the technology and spending, but they also have to keep their businesses profitable. So it kind of leads them into a quandary of how much should they spend, what's the return on investment for spending and trying to protect their data. Overview of cyber risks. Okay, so some of the big things to remember about the cyber risks. If you're connected to the internet, one of the big things that cyber attackers will use is called a denial of service attack, and it's them sending a large amount of data to your network to get your security people or your analysts to start viewing that and looking at that and trying to combat and prevent that, and then they sneak in with another type of malicious attack. Usually what we've seen a lot of is phishing. They will send crafted emails to people within your organization, and within that email will either be a link redirecting them to a fake website for them to put their credentials in, or have a malicious attachment. With that attachment, when they execute it, it loads what is called a remote access Trojan or a piece of malware and starts collecting user credentials from your systems. And as it does that, then it sends it out to the bad guys in the World Wide Web, and they start using those credentials to start circumventing your own systems for you. Some of the reasons that they do this, of course, is financial. The other reason that we've seen is that they, for hacktivists and other cyber organizations, they want to destroy company reputations, especially in the financial services industry and probably some of the hospitality industries and healthcare especially. If your data gets compromised and that gets out, that your patient data or your company data or your client data gets out there, your reputation goes down. That can be millions upon millions of dollars that you're losing in revenue because people decide they don't want to go to your hospital. They don't want to use your bank anymore. They don't want to use your investment firm. And the survey says 87% of all board members and C-level executives do not believe that their cybersecurity infrastructure is adequate. Out of that, 33% of the organizations surveyed say that it's highly unlikely they would ever detect a sophisticated attack. So a well-crafted phishing attack with malware implemented, they would never even see that happening. And most of them don't know it's happening until somebody else tells them that they've seen it happen. 44% of most organizations don't even have security operations centers. They just let their IT department handle it. And 64% don't have any threat intelligence or insider threat programs. So the problem with that is a cyber threat intel program will actually give you indications that something's happening on the wild before it happens to your organization. You'll see it within your industry peers. They share data. And then insider threat programs, fraud and insiders are still very prevalent out there. Somebody who's getting ready to leave the company, and normally they only send 50 emails a day, and then they start sending 500 emails a day. You'll never see that unless you have an insider threat program and the technologies to start doing data analytics on them to figure that out. Or they're starting to access files that they've never accessed before. So their roles as a HR person don't have them accessing financial transactions, but all of a sudden they're starting to pull financial transactions. It happens every day, and if you don't have a good insider threat program, you'll never see it.
Hey, Jeff?
Yes, sir.
If you think about all your client interactions and just say one pervasive issue that they all have that you see, what is it?
Probably the biggest issue that I see everywhere is lack of patching. So they have lots of vulnerabilities come out on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And the turnaround time for organizations to patch it's very political from what we've seen in most organizations. They have to get approval, they have to go through a testing period, and then they send it out to production. Within the production environment, they get a lot of kickback because people don't want their systems to go down. They don't want to have to delay, some sorts of work. Everything's important. Everybody's job's important, so they don't patch, and that's how they get attacked. That's it, and I have it in here, but that's exactly what happened to Equifax. They didn't patch. It was an Apache Struts vulnerability that had been released for 4 months, and they didn't patch it. And that's how they got compromised. So, great saying in our industry is, it's not a question of have you been hacked, it's when you'll be hacked, or if you've been hacked, it's when you're going to be breached. So, yes, sir.
So going back to the last slide, so if it's the question of not if but when, then why is that first bullet point even relevant? I mean, you're validating that yourself.
So
actually should be 100%, and it sounded like it's tough to really do anything about it.
Well, it's not tough, but you still want to take preventive measures. So you still want to have perimeter protections. You still want to have antivirus. You still want to have a patch and vulnerability program. What you want to do is actually make it harder for the attackers to get in. So the problem with security is the attackers are on top of the latest and greatest technology. They're going through the software better than the people who actually programmed it. They're finding the bugs. And sometimes they're actually letting the actual corporations who made the software know about it before they ever even attack it. And the corporations don't even release the patch for it, so they get hacked. So, I mean, yeah, we say, we mean there is they lack confidence in their cybersecurity program. What they mean is that they don't believe that they're putting enough effort, their cybersecurity, their CISOs, their CIOs are not putting enough effort or time into implementing and trying to defend the network to the adequate protection that they believe should be happening. Okay. Yes, sir. Oh, sorry.
I think one of the industries you didn't indicate was the governments.
Yes.
The national, and local, and state, they're always getting hacked. There's no budget to do anything. What are we all doing to protect our information that's all over the government, various government agencies like the IRS and stuff like that? So
I used to work, in my previous life, I was at the Veterans Affairs. I was the director of the Network Security Operations Center there. There was a cybersecurity budget line item. Most of the federal organizations do have cybersecurity budgets, and they actually have laws and mandates that they have to put in place for certain cybersecurity protocols and aspects. DHS has an entire organization now dedicated, so all the federal organizations, civilian, federal, feed into that, and they use it for collecting cyber threat intel and feeding that back into the communities. So I can tell you that the VA, the VA was very popular for the breach of lost veterans data. That cost a lot of money. OPM got breached for veterans or everybody that had a social security number and any identifying factors at OPM as well. It happens every day. Even the DoD gets breached, and they probably are, just an underestimate, 10 years ahead of the rest of the civilian market on technology and protections. So it's hard to keep fighting them, but if you don't fight them, you're going to lose a lot more than if you put the protections in place. If you leave your network wide open, you're going to lose everything. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I think I might know the answer. I'm not going to say it, but what's the implication for mergers and acquisitions? What do you think about there? You didn't really add.
Oh, so I mean that's more. Realistically, it's a cyber espionage. So from a mergers and acquisitions, if your competitor finds out something, especially that a trade's going to happen before and can go and either compete against you to drive other prices up, or your stock to drive this, or do some insider trading. The other thing is and I'm not well versed in, I'm not a merger and acquisitions guy by any means, but it's what I would say, if that gets out that you were hacked, that would probably kill the deal. If your company was going through a merger and acquisition with another company and they got hacked. So probably the best case in point is the AOL compromise, or Yahoo compromise, that when AOL was going to buy them, Yahoo was found to have been infiltrated and compromised, and that actually forced that merger, the acquisition, to take longer because they had to go through a whole bunch of federal investigations, and then they had to go through a breach response and a whole compromise assessment and get a clean bill of health before the acquisition actually fell through, or went through, not fell through. So some recent cyber attacks. The DDoS attack, February 2018, so just this month. Dutch banks and the Dutch government were attacked. Motivation, nobody knows what the motivation or the attackers, who they were. It affected their internet-facing websites. Their customers couldn't log in for up to 4 hours. And the banks will never release what it actually cost them in dollars, but I'm sure it lost them some customers' confidence and possibly movements, as well as the Dutch tax authorization or taxation authority was affected. So, as you can see, a distributed denial of service attack is multiple systems flooding your system to bring it down. Is basically what it amounts to. So. Yes?
Are most of these attacks, from your experience, generated by people looking for economic gain, or are they potentially looking for retribution, or just kudos to be able to say they hacked into, whatever?
So, on the government side, most of the time it's for retribution. It's a nation state thinking that the U.S. government or another government did something against them. And so they're going and they will attack them. So China's a perfect example. They have a battalion of people that all they do is hack all day. They try to get into foreign nation states. But largely what we've seen, the big increase is it's mostly for financial gain. I mean, 74% of all attacks are to compromise user credentials, and the whole reason for the compromise of user credentials is to drain their bank accounts, drain their company accounts, whatever they can do to get financial gain. So, and these are not, little kids with hoodies on in their mom and dad's basement. These are entire criminal organizations who are well funded and well backed that will, stop at nothing really to get as much money as they can in their pockets. So. All right, so some of you may have heard of the big SWIFT compromise. It was attributed to the Lazarus Group. And so here's some of the numbers. Banco del Austro in Ecuador, 12 million. Bank in Vietnam, 1 million. A bank in India, 81 million. And then they also had 2 transactions that were stopped or prevented worth 850 and 870 million both. And the only reason that they were stopped or even found was a misspelling of a word. And then Far East Bank, International Bank in Taiwan, 60 million. So this straight out of Swiss mouth, the threat is very persistent, adaptive, sophisticated, and it's here to stay. So after this attack, SWIFT actually implemented some more security measures that all banks have to go through to do transactions. I don't have those right off the top of my head, so if anybody's going to ask. But this was malware sent via a very targeted spear phishing campaign. They knew when people were off, they knew how to circumvent the systems, and they knew how to do wire transfers. So WannaCry, some of you may have heard of this. This was a very, very widespread attack. Happened in May of 2017. It actually was against a Windows vulnerability, unpatched vulnerability, and it was using the Eternal Blue exploit, and the Eternal Blue exploit was an exploit that was stolen during the NSA compromise. And the big thing about this one is it has an ability to self-replicate. So as soon as it hits one of your targets, it's going to start looking for other targets on your system that have that port and protocol and service available, and then replicate itself to those. So it will just take over your entire network. And this was just recently added to the RETFI banking Trojans. So now, before they were just going after certain payloads and trying to cause ransomware within companies and get Bitcoin payments for it. Now they're actually going after banking systems. Yes?
I'm sorry about this question, but why do they come up with these names? WannaCry? How did they come up with?
So it's funny. That's the U.S. government NSA's naming for it, or Department of Homeland Security's. If you go to another country, it'll be called something else. They're called advanced persistent threat groups. Whenever they make a malware like this or do an attack like this, they get some weird name. If you have a McAfee antivirus, they will call the antivirus that they found something, and if you have Kaspersky, it'll be the same antivirus, but it'll be called something else just so they have a cool name. And I don't know who comes up with them. It's not me.
Okay, thank you.
So we just talked about this. Here's the Equifax one. This was an exploitation, another one that was done using the Apache Struts vulnerability. And the patch had been out there for 4 months, if not longer. They failed to patch their systems, their external websites. Hackers seized it, took control. They got over 145 million accounts. It affected Americans, Canadians, and British citizens. They got everything. And the median price on your identity on the black market is $21.35. Your SSN is worth a can of Coke. It's 50 cents out there. So basically they were able to probably sell these on the black market is about $3 billion for the information that they stole. Equifax had to provide credit monitoring for a year, which they have that service. So to them, it probably was just a write-off. It took them 4 months to disclose. But because of this new legislation, the Data Breach Prevention and Compensation Act is being pushed. And if that act is passed, it's going to be $100 for each consumer with one piece of personal data stolen, and then $50 for each additional personal data compromised. And that could cost Equifax billions of dollars in damages. And they're still not done cleaning up after that.
It would cost me a whole lot more to rectify.
Huh?
It would cost me a whole lot more to rectify on my side.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
Can you trust that you've been notified if you were one of the 100?
No, you can't. So no, just like even when OPM, you had to go out to their website. They tried to hit as many people as possible, but if they didn't, it was up to you to go out to the Equifax's website and OPM's website, put your information in, and find out if your data was compromised. Yes?
So, I went on there, so why would this happen? I put in my email address, and it said I had been affected, and then a week or so later, maybe 2 days later, I did it again, and they said I had it.
So they were cleaning up, but I can tell you that they're getting, even as of yesterday, they're still getting slammed for the way that they handled this breach. So your data may have been compromised, and they didn't want to disclose that at that time. And then once the U.S. government came down on them, they decided to disclose it. So that's part of why this legislation is being put out there. So they have to disclose that as quickly. Because when it first happened, they said there was only 80 million user accounts or data information out there. And now it's already up to 145 to 147 million. So every day it seems to climb too. I've got 3 of them. Yep. Go ahead.
Isn't there a tension, though, between you being on the firing line when you know that something has happened and not really being certain the extent of it, balanced against?
I think the big reason.
Communicate?
Yeah, I mean, I think people could have forgiven Equifax for, hey, we only see this because we're only looking at this database. But what they couldn't forgive them for was that it took them 4 months to disclose that they even were hacked. So not only did it take them 4 months, the patch was out there for 4 months, but after they got hacked, they didn't tell anybody for 4 months. So the attackers were just running rampant in their system. So that's why they really came under fire.
Do you have a recommendation? I mean, based on 145 million, it's going to take years and years and years before, so 1 year of credit monitoring might not help at all.
No, and unfortunately, if you're one of the compromised systems and you didn't sign up for the credit monitoring, it ended in January 18th, 2018, so now you have to go sign up for your own credit monitoring if you're affected.
Do you put a hold on your credit?
Yeah, I mean, the best thing to do would do a credit freeze. Yes?
What I understood after that came out, after they did the press release and put up the website to go find it, what I had heard was that the website that you went to put your information into was actually a hack site, and that Equifax didn't own it. So people were going in there and entering in their information to look up, and it was going someplace else.
So there was a lot of rumors about that. What it was Equifax set up additional servers to handle the load, because if everybody logged into the website to go on the normal credit reporting, it would have basically caused a denial of service. They couldn't handle that type of load. So just like when the whole Healthcare Act went into effect, they set up servers all around the country, and they didn't have the exact same domain. So people thought they were starting to register for stuff that might have been a hack site. It wasn't a hack site. It was just replicated systems, and they couldn't put them on their network because they couldn't guarantee that their network was not compromised, so that's why it didn't have an Equifax.com domain. But yeah, the website itself was not hacked, it wasn't redirected. Yes?
So what are the guarantees that the credit monitoring that we sign up for will cause more issues than not?
Well, I can't give you a guarantee. So, I mean, I don't know. I can tell you that most of the credit monitoring agencies at this point have taken a huge hit because of this. I even saw a couple news articles stating that credit monitoring in the U.S. is dead as we know it. Yes?
Just to clarify, if for malware, you have to open the attachment, right?
I'm sorry?
For malware that infects the computer, you have to open the attachment. It's just not looking at the email.
Correct. That's for a phishing attack. So if you go out to a website and if you go out to a malicious website, and there's plenty of them out there, and you don't have what we call is proxy servers that are scanning websites for malicious links or giving them reputation scores and allowing your users to go to them, you can go out to a website and click on a link, and as soon as that link pops up with whatever video you're looking at, you're already infected with malware. So it's not just coming through email, although email is the most, I guess, the most prevalent way that people are doing it now. It's much easier because whether we like it or not, users like to see if they're going to get a $100 gift card when they read their email from Walmart or an Apple iTunes card. And so you can go through, all your users in your organizations can go through security awareness training and be told, don't click on these links, don't click on these attachments, and they're still going to do it. You're going to get somebody to do it. And all you need is one person in your organization. Any other questions? Okay, we'll just go through it. PETIA, not PETIA, this is what's known as ransomware. So what ransomware does is it comes in and it can be, like you said, through email, somebody clicking on the attachment and installing it, it's malware. But what it does is it goes out and searches your folders or your hard drives, and it will go out into your network and do this as well and find certain files, and it will then lock those files. And the only way to get those files back is to pay the hacker's ransom. So when you see that file and it's locked down, you click on it to execute it or open it up, and it'll pop up and say you owe us 500 Bitcoin to release this file. And the only thing that the FBI will tell you is to pay the ransom. There's no way to fix it. Yes?
So going to the cloud with all my internal account records and such, is that going to help in any of this?
So the cloud is a whole new beast. I won't say that it will or won't at this point. So the cloud's really still new in most organizations. There's good ones out there that will, provide you security, but nobody's going to provide you a 100% guarantee that this won't happen. None of your cloud organizations will give you a 100% guarantee that you will not get hit with ransomware. You won't get hit with any malware. They'll do their best. You have to make sure that you have service level agreements with them to, do the patching. If you turn everything over to them, and they don't, there's a couple different scenarios. You can own your environment in the cloud and run everything. You can have them own everything, you just pay them, and then they will take care of the patching, they will take care of the updating, and then you can have a hybrid approach where they will run certain aspects, they'll do the patching, but you own the infrastructure and your people do the maintenance and the administration of it. Yes?
If you are a victim, you do pay the ransomware. What are the chances you get your files back or they unlock it or whatever?
So most of the time they've been pretty honest. It's a bad term, right? So 99% of the time they have released the files and given you the password to unlock them, but it doesn't mean that they won't come back and hit you again. And it doesn't mean once you pay the ransom for that one file on that one computer that you won't have to pay the same 500 Bitcoin for that same file on another computer. So they're ingenious, and if they can figure out a way to get money, they will. Yes?
I think what the agencies like Secret Service would advise, or FBI, particularly Secret Service, is that you report it. I mean, they don't tell you pay it. You know you have to if it's low enough amount. But if you're a company, they would probably want you to report it and see if there's a mechanism for audit.
They'll still want you to report it. I'm not disagreeing with you, but I will tell you that the FBI's statement is that you should pay ransomware if the file is important enough to you, because there's no way that they can recover it or unlock it. And that's been told to a couple of our clients. So double pulsar is not an actual piece of malware. What it is a piece of payload. Payload is a transfer or a transmission mechanism that people will build their malware on. And what this does is it allows, and again, some of the hackers got really good stuff from the NSA. So it allows for a multiple attack functionality. So what a command and control they can run is a piece of malware, it installs itself, and once it gets in there, they have a channel into your network. It doesn't start attacking, it doesn't take anything down, it sits silently there, and it starts beaconing out, and it connects to their servers on the back end, whether they're in the US, whether they're Russia, Japan, wherever. And once that beacon hits, they now have a covert channel right into your network. and it was initiated from your network, so most of your security devices won't even stop it going outbound. So, cyber threats and motivation. And here we go. So, as we can see, we got hacktivists, cyber criminals, cyber espionage, warriors, and terrorists. And those are pretty much the classifications that they've been given. Everybody does it for a different reason, but most of the time the biggest ones are the cyber criminals who are after it for financial gain. 74% of all attacks and breaches end in a financial gain, and they're done by cyber criminals. Most of the ones that are done by cyber for espionage or from terrorists, cyber terrorists, are nation states trying to take down U.S. government critical information protection systems, infrastructure systems, government systems, national security measures. So, and then hacktivists are really, I'll say they're the most underfunded group out there, and really what they're out to do is just make a name for themselves. They'll do something and try to publicize it just so they can get their name in the paper. So who's behind the breaches? 75% perpetrated from outsiders, and 25% are perpetrated from your inside people. As you can see, 51% are organized crimes or organized criminal groups. And then this is kind of misleading. 62% are hacks, but the hacks actually come after the phishing. And then, like we said, 43% were started just using social engineering attacks. And social engineering attacks are not just email. Social engineering attacks can be you have a help desk and they call your help desk and they know one of your user accounts and they ask you to reset the password and you don't have any other factoring limitations. You don't ask for their date of birth or a secondary question. Your end users just go and, or administrators just go and change the password. You give them free right into your system.
When you talk about 75%, is that 75% that were intentionally perpetrated or that were accidentally, including the ones that people...
So the accidents are included in the internal actors. That's privilege misuse, that's somebody maybe clicking on a file they shouldn't have, or going to a website they weren't supposed to. That's where the insiders and the privilege or the misuse comes from. The actual perpetrated from outsiders is an outside person to your organization actually going and getting in. So here's just a list. Financial makes up the biggest individual industry of compromises, and then that's followed by healthcare and retail and accommodation. Financial, of course, they want to get user accounts, they want to get bank accounts, they want to get transactional accounts, whatever they can get to drain either your individual's bank account or your company's bank account. Healthcare, they're looking at personal health records, because if they can get your personal health record, they can sell it on the black market. And retail, it's point of sales transactions. If they can compromise that, they can go in and steal stuff pretty easily through the open online websites.
Who do they sell the health records to?
So there's entire websites and legitimately when they say the dark web, it's called the dark web and the black market. But they will sell it to other organizations or criminals who want to go and get a credit card in your name. So I have your birthday, I have your social security number, I have your mother's maiden name, I have your home address. I go and instead of your home address, I open up a P.O. box or just have a different address sent, but I can get a credit card open to your name as long as your credit check is good. Yes?
Now, some of the financial organizations are moving to voice recognition when you call someone to identify you, as opposed to asking you certain security questions. Do you view that as a good move?
No.
As a consumer to go with that?
No, I mean, no, I think there's There's no perfect scenario, but biometrics is the closest. Voice recognition, and even facial recognition is bad. You know, Apple's proved that with their new iPhone. So you can thwart the Apple iPhone as long as you look pretty similar to the person who's, you know, who owns it with their facial recognition. So I think voice recognition is probably one of the worst ways to do a two-factor, you know, verification system. Well, one of the things that I've seen that I really like is them giving their users, it's called a one-time password. So you log in with your bank account number and your password, and then it asks you, and it gives you a list of 15 questions when you set this up. It asks you one of those questions, and then it has to send you an email to your, and you have to click on what you want, to your own email or to one of your registered phone numbers. It will send you an SMS text. And then you get that one-time password, and that one-time password then allows you to access your accounts.
So you view that as a good...
That's a much better than doing voice recognition, yeah. So here's some threat actions over 2017, and as you can see from 2010 to 2017, social engineering has taken the biggest upward climb, and it's just easy to do. They can get all you have to do is go out on a website. If I'm researching your company, I just look up your domain name on the website on Google, and I can find a whole bunch of list of your user accounts just based off of if you've been to conferences, if you've been, you know, anything that you register for online is out there. And usually people register with their work accounts to go to work business functions. So now I have a list of all your, a good list of users that I can try to send emails to. So here's common traits. Like we said, 73% are financially motivated. 66 were sent via email attachments. 21% were espionage, and 27% of all those infections were found by third parties. So somebody else had to tell the company that they were compromised. And here's some statistics on social engineering per industry. In the top left, you see industries related to, the top industries related to social engineering breaches, and then the susceptibility on the right for phishing. Yes?
So, like, for this group, like, we're all CFOs, we're in the finance department, for a lot of us are, or if you work for a bank, you go for a conference, how do people give out Yahoo email? Or?
So I will tell you there's a big push in a lot of corporations now and banks that you have two email addresses. You have an internal one that is only used for internal mail and inter-office communications, and there's one that's used for public communications. And that public communications one is the one that you use for registering, and usually, you know, that's pretty much your spam box. If you're getting stuff from there, there's a reason for it, and it's probably not good unless it's from the conference that you just attended.
And do you link them or at all?
No, you log in separately. Yes?
Intuitively, I would think that after a company suffers a major hack, that they would spend a great deal more on defense. Is that your observation?
So in cybersecurity, we never waste a good emergency. So, you know, yeah, it's usually, a lot of people don't want to spend, or organizations just see cybersecurity as, we have an FEI audit. We have a requirement because of SOX or HIPAA or FISMA, whatever industry you're in. I'm sure you have PCI. They look at it, it's just a requirement, and they have to do something to put that check in the box. But as soon as they get compromised, then they realize that they're going to be spending a lot more than had they put this in their budget on a recurring basis. Yes?
And I don't remember which attack it was, but I thought it was Samsung that had an attack that actually they went through the smart TV. And you had mentioned earlier about the Internet of Things as being the next big thing for 2018.
Yep.
What are some things that this group should think about for Internet of Things as we move down that path?
So that's a great question. So My counterpart has an awesome demo to show you how easy it is to hack Internet of Things. I don't, but, and I apologize for that, I can send you his demo later, but some of the things to think about is your refrigerators are now connected, your toaster ovens are connected. I was at a security conference where the Jeep compromised, where they hacked the actual car itself and made it turn on, turn off, open doors, lock doors, do everything. And funny, I was actually just at a meeting this morning and we were talking to a logistics company and they are going to Internet of Things. Their braking systems, their trailers, everything is connected to the internet. And all it takes is one of those items to, and I told the board member, if there's a vulnerability to your braking system on your shipping trucks, and I find out that vulnerability, I can lock your entire industry down, your entire company down for a day, if not days, and it will take somebody to physically go out to each of those vehicles and patch it to unlock it. So, when people think about it, they think, oh, this is, what's this going to cost me? Well, think about it from a business perspective. If your entire organization shuts down for one day, how much is that going to cost you? And that's what, that's how easy it is. Everybody's got cameras on their computers nowadays. And those are, I keep mine covered up because they're really easy to take over. Everything's getting connected, and the more things get connected, the more vulnerabilities are out there. And Apple used to have this great saying that they never got hacked, and as soon as they made that saying, now they've been hacked a whole bunch of times, and Macs have security patches all the time, and so do iPhones. And so it's just a matter of time. If you're getting into the Internet of Things and connecting to the cloud environment, it's just a matter of time before the bad guys figure out how to circumvent it. And so you have to try to stay ahead of them on how to protect it. So we've kind of beat this to death, but social engineering is, it's considered phishing, spear phishing. Spear phishing is a very targeted attack. So if I'm going after your organization, I'm probably not going to look for the regular user, just somebody who comes into the office every day and logs in, logs out, and goes home. I'm going to be looking for the C-level. I'm going to be looking for people that have access to the information that will get me to probably the quickest financial gain that I can achieve before I get caught. And then, like I said, some people just will call in. People are really good. That's how, I don't know if everybody's really well aware, but there was the world's most famous hacker, Kevin Mitnick. And he did all of his hacking from a Radio Shack store using their phones and just calling companies. And he was a nice enough guy, and they reset passwords for him, and he got right in. So here's basically a chain of event of what happens. So I send a malicious email with the attachment to somebody. The person clicks it, it installs on their device, and it identifies when they're starting to log into the banking website or putting in credentials. Keyloggers capture it. They send that file out to my server or my computer waiting in the wings, and then I have it, and I go to your website and I log in, and now I'm in your system. And it can happen in 5 minutes or less.
Question?
Yes?
So what if I put my password, for example, I save it in Excel, and then I copy and paste the password instead of typing it in? Does that help?
Well, it helps, but now your password's in a clear text file, so if I ever get into your network, now you've just given me all your passwords in clear text. So that's even worse. I mean, it's better than clicking, right? But now, if I'm a bad guy and I am in your network, you have files that have, and this happens all the time, so I'm not picking on you. Organizations do this all the time. They put all their administrator passwords in a big Excel file and put it out on a shared drive in their network. It's like giving breadcrumbs to the bad guys just to take over your network. So I would say if you're going to use do passwords, use something that has it's a password manager. There's free ones out there. One's called Keylogger. It actually uses AES encryption. You have to have a password to get into it. Yeah, it saves everything in encrypted format. So even if somebody gets it, they have to have the master file password to actually get into those passwords. But Excel is, I mean, you can password protect Excel files, but those are pretty breakable. They're pretty easy to hack and run through a rainbow hash system and break them. So after I get your credentials, basically I start filtering out money, and I'll do it small and see if it gets noticed. You know, a couple cents here, a couple cents there, and then I'll wait until you get payday, and then I'll take everything, and then I'll be gone. So there's a couple organizations and frameworks out there that have controls, and the controls are they're not requirements, they're not laws, they're not mandates. Unless you're in the government, you have to use the NIST cybersecurity framework. But these controls are actually put out there to help organizations align their cybersecurity practices. So one of them is use strong passwords, use passwords more than 12 characters. You know, be able to detect, be able to respond, have firewalls, have logging, log for longer than a day so you can see people trying to do stuff on your network. So out in the NIST cybersecurity framework, there's 5 functions, 22 categories, and 98 subcategories. You don't have to follow them all, but if you pick them, or if you pick NIST as a framework, you have a guiding principle to kind of build your cybersecurity organization foundation off of. And there's some other ones. We have the critical security controls for CIS. That's a benchmarking system. They have 20 prioritized sets. They work closely with the SANS organization, the Security and Organization. And again, you know, you use these controls as a guiding principle. You don't have to follow them verbatim, but if your company is up for an audit, following these control frameworks is an auditable company, following these type of control frameworks is a really good way to pass audit and not to keep on going back and having plan of actions and milestones and roadmaps and maturity level phasings and everything else. And then for international, they have the ISO 27001 and 27002. 001 is the book, and 002 is the information security controls. And a lot of international organizations utilize this because it spans global industries. So, defensive quick wins. So these are things that every organization can do. It doesn't cost them a lot of money to do, and it will provide great return on investment quickly. So one of the things is to inventory all your endpoints. So all your computers, your servers, and then after you find those, prioritize those. Figure out in what people call them the crown jewels. Figure out where your crown jewels are. Figure out where your financial data is stored, where your database is, where your transactional systems are, where all the stuff that if it went down today would ruin your entire organization. And prioritize those as the first and foremost things to get all the patches they need and get the hardened security guidelines that needs to happen. Then go out, patch your systems, and then remediate all critical and high-risk findings. I can't stress this enough. Most of the organizations that we find that get hacked, it's because they haven't patched. It's not because they have any glaring holes through their security systems, outside of the phishing, but the malware exploits patches. So some of the things I touched on, and quickly, two-factor, multi-factor authentication, DDoS protection, and establish an insider threat program. And we're running low on time. We'll go through quick. Some hot topics. So some hot topics, maybe for this organization, maybe not, but one of the things that most C-level and board members like to see are, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but they like to see dashboards, they like to see the pictures, they like to see the pie charts, they like to have that understanding, not down to the minute details, but to see where they stand. So to get that, to start monitoring your systems and to bring that into a holistic view with the business objectives and have those align, gives the organization a lot more room to stand on when they're trying to push for a cybersecurity program. Other thing out there is indicators of compromise. That's pretty much what we were talking about. It's basically on the wild, it's called an indicator of compromise. It's a signature, it's a way of attack that somebody does or an attack group does or a criminal organization does that can be attributed back to them. If your organization has what we call cyber threat intel or belongs to a cyber threat intel group, this is what they will start, if they start seeing things, if you share that you've been attacked, they will share this out with the rest of your peer organizations, and that will help you put up defensive mechanisms before they ever hit you. So, and then security health checks. Can't say this enough, if you have questions about where your cybersecurity organization is in alignment with any of the frameworks, or if you have a framework, get a health check done. Have somebody come in, independent, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but your security people are probably your biggest violators of your security policies. So have an independent organization come out and actually check and do an independence audit or assessment on your security and risk to your organization. All right, and I do have a little thing to show you. So I promised I don't have an awesome hacking demo, but I can show you. And here's just, oh, let me actually move that over, sorry. So FireEye is a company, Mandiant's a company, they own FireEye. They put what's called honeypots out there, and they're networks that they want to get hacked. And they use those to start collecting intelligence information, figuring out signatures, figuring out, advanced persistent threat groups, and indicators of compromise. So that's the feed. This is, if you pay for it, you get a lot better. I will show you. And I don't pay for it, so let's. So here's a real-time one from Kaspersky, which is also a security company out there. And this is happening in real time.
What is it?
Those are attacks against vulnerabilities, against companies, against organizations. So.
You can't use them anymore, right?
Kaspersky? Who can't use them?
Well, government isn't using them anymore. Is that correct?
Correct. Well, the government has a pretty strong, McAfee has a pretty strong foothold in the government.
It is Russian.
Huh?
It is Russian.
Yes. I don't know. Let me refresh this. Hold on. And this is one from Deutsche Bank and T-Mobile. Darn it. Okay. I thought this isn't displaying as nice in there. Oh, okay. So I was going to show you, let's see.
So if a company wanted to step up its cybersecurity program internally, would you recommend going through the hire some staff and try and do it, or are there specific firms that can do it as an outsourced service that could jump in and start helping?
I used to be a firm believer that everything should be housed in source, or sourced in-house. What we've come to believe, and I can just tell you quick, but these are attacks in the last minute. Here's attacks in the last hour, 318,000, and here's attacks, 6 million attacks in the last 24 hours. So that's how much is going against. But back to your question, I used to be a strong believer that you should bring all your security in-house. It's really hard to keep your security staff at the lower levels either engaged or employed. And the problem is you bring them in and they start getting all this great experience, and you send them to training, you give them all these certifications, and then they go and say, I'm really bored doing what I'm doing, and I need a raise, and I want to be a higher tiered employee. And they're asking for $30,000 to $50,000, and we see this all the time in a lot of the organizations for that raise, and they can go walk right out the door and get it. So what from our experience, what we've seen the best approach is to look at a managed solutions provider for your what we call level 1 and level 2. It's the initial monitoring and triaging of your events from your perimeter and even internal network. And then they will escalate those into your in-house staff of experienced professionals. And the reason you do want in-house staff is they know your environment better than anybody you're going to hire on the outside too. And they live and breathe it daily, and they're able to handle it. And if there is an actual incident, they're able to respond to it immediately. Yes?
You did a nice overview of the whole of this subject matter. Will it be available on PowerPoint, download, or PDF?
Yeah, we can definitely make it available. Yeah.
So we'll work with Susan Gidley on getting that done. One more question?
Yes.
Painted a pretty bleak picture.
We're cybersecurity guys always paint bleak pictures. You're never going to hear us say this is awesome. You know.
Is there any future technologies that are going to help us out? I'm thinking of 5G or future internet protocol or quantum communications or something.
So the best technology is the old technology because nobody even wastes time with it anymore, right? So quite honestly, Swift used to have what was called an X.25 communications protocol. They were never ever compromised. None of the banks were ever compromised because nobody ever used it. They upgraded to IP and IPv6, and all these compromises started happening at the banks. There are technologies out there. There's called endpoint detection and response. So outside of your antivirus, these are pieces of software that sit on your network or sit on your endpoint. And if they detect a compromise, they will automatically put that machine into a sandbox and not let it communicate with the rest of the network. And they're run by various different companies, and they have their own threat intel programs, and they keep them updated pretty regularly. The other thing for insider threat is what we call user and entity behavioral analytics, and that's taking your log data that's generated from all your internal and external owned devices and looking for patterns that may not be seen through regular log data. Yes?
This is like the issues are $1 trillion or more if we think about all the hacks that you just mentioned. Is law enforcement doing anything that you are aware of, or that, because how would you deal with this bad actors out there?
So one of the biggest problems for the longest time was there was no actual cyber law. There was no law to persecute anybody unless they were in the US. The FBI went after them. And the only thing the FBI really ever cared about was child porn. And I mean this 100%, but now that it's becoming more and more, large organizations are actually getting FBI agents assigned to them to handle cybersecurity incidents and breaches. The Department of Defense, the NSA, DHS, they actually have an entire threat intel program that most organizations can subscribe to. So you can get a lot of this information, and they're always working with the latest and greatest technologies. They have their own venture capitalist firms that they invest in with public and startup companies for some of this stuff. So, and they're employing some of the hackers too.
Can we thank Jeff Spaeth, Director of Cybersecurity at Grant Thornton?